Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the regular meeting of the Johnson County Library Board of Directors for the month of July. Coming to you live and in Technicolor from the Monticello Library. Do we have any citizens' comments? Yes, ma'am. Podium is over there with a microphone for you.
Charlotte O'Hara, 15712 Windsor Street. I come before the board as a citizen, not as a commissioner, and I'm just want to say that I'm very concerned about the $67 million that is planned for a library at 151st and Antioch approximately. I have talked to several people in the area, and I have not found one person who is in favor of this. This is more than 1/3 the cost of the courthouse. This is absolutely inexcusable expenditures of public money. And I just, as a citizen, I just want to voice my opposition loud and clear. Thank you.
Sorry, I am on mic. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to share your thoughts with us. We appreciate that. Are there any other citizen comments? Were any sent in, Sean? Or are we good?
No comments were sent in.
Okay, fantastic. We are then going to move on to the members of the Johnson County Library Board of Directors. Allie Sealing has sent her apologies. She had a vacation planned long before she was appointed to this board, so is currently enjoying sun and sand, not in Kansas. And I do not know about our other members. Nobody else sent their apologies, so hopefully they are on their way and possibly stuck in traffic.
At this point, we have 4 board members, so we have a quorum.
Yes, we are in fact quorate. And Commissioner Hanslick also sent her apologies that there was something that she had that she could not change to be here. So on her behalf, I am going to share a couple of book recommendations. Should you enjoy summer reading and feel like summer is an excellent time to adventure with monster slayers and elves, I can endorse the Witcher series. If you are a fan of Netflix and particularly Henry Cavill, you might also enjoy that. Or video games, that is a fun one. But in addition to fun summer reading, for me this time of year is also reading towards the next academic year for my kids. We are homeschoolers, and I also have a degree in philosophy, and so we kind of do a lot of stuff, and my daughter will be heading in towards formal logic for the first time as an 8th grader, and we talk a lot about logical fallacies, which if you have ever read the comments section of any social media post, you will probably have noticed many of those out in the wild. So if you are interested in such things, I can recommend the amazing Dr. Ransom's Bestiary of Adorable Fallacies, a field guide for clear thinkers by Douglas and N.D. Wilson. And if you have a particularly amusing bent, as occasionally I do, I take snapshots of the drawings from the bestiaries to help illustrate what it is the person is doing wrong, and find that both personally gratifying and incredibly entertaining when you are posting pictures of ad hominem attacks or other super fun fallacies. For some more high-level reading on a very similar theme, I can also recommend The Coddling of the American Mind by Greg Lukanoff and Jonathan Haidt. And that is kind of about how good intentions and bad ideas are setting up a current generation for failure. And it is a brilliant book written by 2 people who worked for Atlantic Monthly, who were looking as to why we were kind of socially seeing some trends, and especially a lot of people who are complaining about things on college campuses. And it was an incredibly interesting book. It doesn't really particularly have a left or right leaning. It's more just about looking at ideas and how we communicate those. And it's an incredibly interesting read for people who are into big ideas and big thoughts, but also with some practical help for ways that you can kind of check your own biases, as it were. And so I highly recommend that, but also definitely slaying literal monsters and imaginary monsters is kind of my summer theme. So thought I would share that with you guys. That is all from me. So we will head to the development department unless anybody has anything else. Tag, you're it. Batter up.
Greetings. My name is Jody Dietz, and I'm on the Friends of the Library Board. So since you were sharing book choices, I thought I'd throw one of mine out here quickly. It's called The Death of Expertise by Tom Nichols. And I'm halfway through, and it's absolutely fantastic. So I would highly recommend that book to you guys. So welcome, Madam Chair, and thank you, and members of the board, and Mr. Casserley, for this time to report on Friends progress on behalf of the Friends of the Library Executive Committee. There are 3 subjects in our report today, detailing activities from May through the end of June 2021. And they're broken into financial position, internet sales, and upcoming sales events in July. So the first section, financial position, the Friends are in excellent shape considering the challenges of our activities we have faced in the past year during the pandemic. Net revenues from January through May are 1,700% over budget, and that is before we have added back our in-person sales. We are really excited about the direction we're headed. This performance is largely due to internet sales. We still have a good deal of work to do on our memberships. Our marketing and membership committees are working together to identify our potential customers and how we can reach them. So stay tuned for that. And I would also put a plug in if any of you on the board are not members of the Friends, let me know and I'll hook you up. So the second section is internet sales. Thanks to the excellent work of our internet sales volunteers, we received the eBay top-rated seller status as of May 26th. The top-rated plus seal is displayed prominently in search results and listing descriptions, and the following verbiage now appears on our feedback profile. One of eBay's most reputable sellers and consistently delivers outstanding customer service. So that's a huge coup for us. This owes much to our hard work of our staff and volunteers who provide a friendly, satisfying, and efficient customer experience. This takes a lot of energy, and we are grateful that so many have committed so much to support our library system. We fulfilled 2,357 orders in May. And here's a few sales of note, which I'm sure most of you would never guess that these would be the top sellers, but here we go. The first one was, the book was called The Ultimate Evil, an investigation into America's most dangerous satanic cult. Ooh. And we sold that for $195.31 to a customer in Garland, Texas. The next one was the riveting edition of the Steel Construction Manual for $142.82 to a project engineer in West Des Moines, Iowa. And finally, the third notable item is we sold the History of Old-Time Farm Implement Companies and the Wrenches They Issued, that's wrenches with a W, wrenches they issued, for $130 to a resident in Kenton, Delaware. So those are kind of some interesting areas and all very diverse. So the third topic is sales events in July. In-person used book sales events are back. The Friends are easing back into in-person used book sales. Coming up, 2 exciting pop-up opportunities where you can buy lightly used materials for bargain prices and support your library. And you can also renew or establish your membership there also. So the first one is called Books and Brews, and it's Wednesday through Sunday, July 14th through 18th. You may want to check the hours specifically on our Friends website, but it will be at a brew house in Gardner, Kansas. And then the second one is the Unbook sale at our Blue Valley Library Meeting Room on Saturday, July 31st from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So that's going to be puzzles, music CDs, vintage reading materials, things like that, and being a huge supporter of our Blue Valley Library. I'm sure most of you know I believe that's one of the busiest libraries in our system and is used heavily, and our community really supports our Blue Valley Library specifically. So do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Are you planning more of the events like the Books and Brews and other communities?
Yes, we are. We've been trying to brainstorm this last year about better ways we can engage with the community. And so we've talked about events such as this, as well as author events and all of that. So we're really excited about the opportunities we can provide. And the library system in Johnson County is stellar. So we have a great product to work with. Thanks. Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Miss Stephanie.
Thank you, Jody Dietz. That's a great report from the Friends. I'm Stephanie Stolzheimer. I'm delighted to report on behalf of the Foundation, and I'm going to talk about the Friends a little bit too. First, I'd like to report on our Kauffman Foundation grant from 2020 to 2021. As you probably know, Kauffman grants are a coup. It's really great to get the support of the Kauffman Foundation. Last year, we received a 2-year commitment for $100,000. The total was actually $72,000 last year, and we were scheduled to receive another $28,000 this year. The 2 programs that are benefiting are Race Project KC and online programming. To note, to have Kauffman support our online programming was amazing because they took a chance on something that we hadn't really done before. And this became a shining example of how the library was innovative during COVID. Because it was so good, we asked for a little more money for online programming. And it qualified for an additional $15,000 grant this year to add live closed captioning to the On24 platform. So we're very excited to add that additional access point for the online programming. In addition, Kauffman recommended the library to participate in a pilot program called Data for Good that Kauffman will fully fund. The goal is to empower the library with analytics to drive our impact. It's something every organization struggles with. And this will include a custom platform that we will use and client service consultants who will help us through it. And just a little shout out to Adam Wathen on the administrative team. He's really going to interface with this activity and see if it might be really beneficial for the library in the long run. I'd like to share a Library Let's Loose update. Keep your calendars marked for September 18th for our virtual event. We are pre-producing a wonderful program that will tell the library story and why being a donor is so important to support the library above and beyond what public funding provides. In addition to the event on the 18th, we're hosting summer events to build engagement. We have some trivia nights planned. They started in June, and we have a July 14th and an August 11th trivia night planned. They're free, and people can make a donation if they'd like to when they register on Eventbrite. We also have an online scavenger hunt that is going to be multiple weeks, July 17th through August 1st. These pre-events have just been a kick because they're totally volunteer driven, not totally, but very largely volunteer driven. We have an amazing cast and crew of Library Let's Loose committee members, and we're excited to have another good year on deck for us. And finally, I want to report on how the library volunteers are partnering with the Department of Health and Environment with the county. The library was asked to partner with the Department of Health because testing rates were down. More testing helps ensure positivity rates are accurate. So we turned to the volunteers and said, could you help do this? And 42 volunteers were recruited to pass out free testing kits at Antioch and Blue Valley branches. And to date, we've given out about 240 kits. Additionally, the volunteers are placing these business cards about the vaccination, how to get vaccinated. Little business cards going into all the holds. I mean, they've put 10,000 of these things into holds. So our volunteers are doing their best to move the initiatives of the health department forward. And that's really it. That concludes my report. Are there any questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, since Commissioner Hanslick isn't here, we can move on to the reports. Mr. Logan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know the placard says Fred Logan, but I'm Andy Logan, Counsel of the Library. Sean has asked that I present today on the Charter Commission. I know it's also going to be a topic later in Sean's updates, so I'll give a little bit of background and talk a little bit about the recent presentation that Sean made to the Commission. Currently, the Charter Commission is hearing presentations from various county departments, agencies, and entities. And as background, the County Charter Commission was established this February by the Board of County Commissioners. It's authorized by state statute and the County Home Rule Charter. The Charter Commission meets every 10 years, first meeting in 2000, then again in 2011, and now this year. The purpose of the Charter Commission is really to study the county government structure, determine what changes, if any, need to be made to that structure, if there are changes that need to be made to the Home Rule Charter. It's not mandatory or necessary that there are recommendations made for changes. It's merely a matter of whether or not the Commission determines those actually do need to be made. And in 2011, there were not any changes made. One thing that I think is important to emphasize for the library's purpose is, because of the nature of Johnson County Library as an independent taxing subdivision and its statutory scheme and structure, the Charter Commission has limited abilities to change the governance structure of the Johnson County Library or of this board because of that independent nature. There are 25 members who sit on the Charter Commission. They're appointed by various groups within the county and interests throughout the county. And so they're currently going through the work of hearing from various groups and considering whether or not, county government is working as it should. And recently, Sean presented to the commission. We were there, asked by Sean to be there for his presentation. I will say it was a great presentation, was very well received. He really emphasized the independent nature of the Johnson County Library, but also the great cooperation between the library and county government, and talked about a lot of the collaboration and partnerships that have been ongoing, have been really successful, from not just those areas where the library is required by statute to follow county policy, like on HR and finance, but talking about those other things, like with corrections and some of the other areas, like tonight, talking about, partnering with the Sheriff's Department for security measures. So things like that, where the library has really been able to collaborate and do some really good work as partners with county government. So it was a very good presentation. And I figure Sean will talk about that in more depth later. But that's a little bit of background about the Charter Commission and how it works. If I can answer any questions, I'm happy to.
Is the commission really more investigating, or do they have any legislative power? Or would they recommend to the legislature what needs to be amended?
Or to the Board of County
Or to the Board of County Commissioners?
Board of County Commissioners. So there's a deadline of next March of 2022 to present their findings and any recommendations they have for the board. Some of those, depending on what the recommendations are, they may be presented to voters for a vote. Certain things might be addressed in other ways at the county level. But yes, they do. They're making recommendations, and then those are considered by the BOCC.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Sean, batter up.
Thank you. I'd like to invite David Vratny to talk to us about the budget, and then followed by Adam Wathen to talk to us, to give us our branch reports.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Good afternoon. I'm going to direct you to page 9 in your packet. It's the revenue report for end of May 2021. As you can see, we're almost 42% of the way through the year as of the end of May. And we've collected about $22.5 million to date, which is around 54%. I'd gone back and looked, and the last 5 years we've averaged by way of revenue from a percentage standpoint somewhere between 53 and 55%. So 54% is about where we would expect to be at this point in time. A little bit of a preview for next month. We will be receiving a significant next portion of our ad valorem revenue. So when I come back, there'll be next month there'll be quite a bit more to report on from that perspective. And then from an expense standpoint, we're on target for where I'd expect to be at this point in time too. We've obligated ourselves to about $17.8 million, and again, this includes collections and then our interfund transfers that have been made thus far. So with that, I'll stand for any questions that anyone might have.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
It's probably not even for you, but on the salaries, are we fully staffed now? And have we had trouble hiring people back like other industries that you keep hearing about?
Yes, and how do I say that? Yes and no. We are not fully staffed at this point, but as we have positions that are still pending, we're not appearing to have a lot of trouble for those that I am aware of. There still seems to be a highly desirable place for people to work, and I know that, personally with my assistant, we have a position that's open, and I think we've had 32. Yeah, and it's just been posted for maybe 10 days. So that's, for us, it's a good pool. Working at this library system is highly sought after in the community. So we're very fortunate.
All right, thank you.
That was a great question. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Adam Wathen, Associate Director for System-Wide Services, and this month I'll be presenting our core operational statistics and then showing a slice of trends in branch services. Some of these statistics are fairly meaty, and so I don't ask a lot in here for questions, so interrupt me if you do have questions. I'm glad to explain anything that's in here. We start by looking at circulation, and these statistics are through May. The digital usage trend shows that 2021 looks to be returning to the pattern of 2019. It shows a significant increase over 2019 levels, and 2020 was really an anomaly since our physical buildings were closed in March, April, and part of May, and this drove patron usage toward digital content since our physical collection was unavailable to patrons. And the next trend shows our physical circulation. Physical circulation is lower in May of 2021 than 2018 and 2019 levels. Obviously, 2020 levels bottomed out when we were closed to the public because of COVID-19, and we weren't circulating physical materials. There are several reasons that physical circulation may have dipped from April to May this year. One is that we have had several buildings closed for parts of May due to construction, air conditioning, and sewer issues. Cedar Row, Corinth, and Monticello all were closed for parts of May, and Central Resource Library continues to not have a browsing collection as we work on construction there and just have Little Central open, which is a holds-only collection. Another reason may be the impact of COVID-19 on the publishing industry in both movies and in books. The film industry was significantly disrupted, and new movies available to our collection are hard to come by. Both industries have hesitated to publish big-name titles and have pushed content release dates back. Our circulation is significantly based on titles purchased in the previous 2 years, and we're also seeing the problems with our vendors in our delivery pipeline clear up, which contributes to the problem. But it's starting to get more normal than it has been over the last few months. With a lack of available content during COVID, we may continue to see lower checkout rates until the publishing industry and our content supply chains return to pre-COVID levels. The next slide shows our visitation trends. Visitation is increasing, but still lags from pre-COVID levels. And as I indicated in our circulation, our construction closures contribute to the lack of visitation. I'm excited to see the trend continue to go up in the coming months. And any questions on those before I turn to our branch statistics? Okay. In the branch services trends, I'll be looking at mostly 5-year trends, and this includes the years of 2016 through 2020. We start with the circulation by branch. These statistics are generally dependent on the size of the branch and the size of its collection. You can see a slight downtrend from 2016 through 2019 at most branches, with, of course, a severe downturn in 2020. The addition of Monticello as a new branch in 2018 includes both additional circulation at that branch from new patrons and circulation from patrons who moved from other branches to Monticello, contributing to the decrease in circulation at those branches. You can see that especially in the 2019 circulation at Shawnee. Shawnee dropped more than other branches in both 2018 and 2019 when Monticello opened. And in the next chart, I have divided the circulations at each branch by the staffing levels at that branch to arrive at a comparative number of circulations per staff member. The blue line across the center, it's around 23,000, is the average of each branch. Those branches with bars higher than that average have more circulations per staff member than the branches with bars below the average line. Another way to think about this is that the branches with bars below the average line have more staff per circulation than their counterparts, which have the bars above the line. 2020 is obviously problematic in that our circulation was significantly down. Every branch landed below the line, indicating that all branches had a higher staff allocation per circulation than normal. And as well, I'd like to mention that this is not a comparison of just the materials handling staff at the branch. The numbers include all branch staff. That's information services, management staff, and materials handling. So a branch like Lenexa City Center that has more service points than other branches may have more staff per circulation than other branches just because we have to staff more service points. The next slide steps into the visits per branch. And you can see that 2020 is significantly down from previous years. As well, some branches saw lower visits in 2019 than in previous years. Again, Monticello's opening may have drafted many visitors from other branches. And the next slide compares staffing levels to visitation. So like the comparison of circulations to staffing, I've included an average line at about 14,000 visits per staff member. Those branches with lines above the average have fewer staff applied per visit than those below the average. You can see the change at Lackman and Lenexa from 2018 to 2019. This is the year that we opened the Lenexa City Center Library and increased the number of staff to run that building. And that drove the bar from above the midline to below the midline, indicating that more staff were allocated per visit at Lenexa than we had at the Lackman branch. You can also see that in 2019, several branches came closer to the average line. Cedar Row, Edgerton, and Leawood all had staffing changes that brought their averages closer to the system average, which is right-sizing the number of staff allocated per visitor. On the next slide, I combined both circulation and visitation and divided that number by the number of staff per branch. This gives us a better sense of how staffing is allocated at a branch based on the amount of public-facing service we do, both the materials handling and the visitation. If we treat 2020 like an anomaly, you can see that in 2019, branches were all fairly close to the midline. The biggest outliers were Spring Hill and Monticello. With a return to more normal circulation and visitation numbers, we can continue to work on leveling staffing so that all branches are applying similar resources to frontline service. And finally, the next two charts show computer service at our branches. The first is the average number of computer sessions per visitor at each branch. And you can see that Central expects the most computer use per visitor, with about one use in every 4 visits, or about 25% of our visits include the use of a computer. On the low end, you can see that between about 5 and 10% of visits include computer use at other branches. So many of our branches are more like 1 in 20 or 1 in 10 visits include computer use. Even though 2020 was a really odd year to compare, the trends seem to align with previous years in 2020. And the final chart shows the average number of sessions per computer at a branch. In 2020, I halved the number of computers at branches because of our social distancing requirements. We stopped use of many of the computers to create social distancing in our computer areas for much of the year. This made 2020 comparable to previous years in the data. You can see where computer demand was in 2020 and in previous years. The large spike in central computer demand in 2020 is not only because of COVID-19, it's also because when we closed the building, we created access to 9 computers in Little Central, and that's very different than the normal 30 computers or so that we have in those computer corrals. So those 9 have been very heavily used, and when we reopen, we should see that usage realign with the rest of the chart. So any questions for me about this report?
I got a question. I know you've said this before. How do you track the number of visits?
We do that. Every branch has either an electric eye or the gate counts people as it comes through, depending. And so each branch has, some of them have the same system in place and some of them have very different systems in place. And so some of the counters, staff go to that counter every day and just write down the number that's on the counter and reset it. And for some of them, it's an electric eye that just keeps rolling forward, and we track that. And so every day at the branch, our staff record how many visits happen at that branch. Any other questions?
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to invite Scott to come up and talk about the Capital Library Master Plan. But before he gives his presentation, I'd like to just make a few comments. Because we have new board members as part of the library board, you may not be aware of the Capital Library Master Plan and the process that it took. In a very brief summary, in end of 2014, I was asked by the Commission and the Library Board to put together a Capital Library Master Plan looking at our facilities and what the need was in the community. Working kind of with Ames and Group 4, we did a study, meeting with various community members, and completed that report. The price on that required to do the entire plan, a 1.1 mil increase. The report was presented to the Board of County Commission. The Commission agreed to partially fund that at the 0.75 mil level, and then the Commission also voted on the approval of that plan, and that plan was passed by the Commission, as well as the increase of the 0.75 mil increase that funded it. So as we go forward with the plan, we know that has been approved by a previous library board and the Board of County Commission. It's the plan that we meet by policy and review as a library board annually as far as prioritizing those. And that may just be an update onto the process of how did this capital plan go. We worked a lot looking really at a 20 to 40 year horizon, and in the case of various school districts, worked with their capital plans to understand in the next 20 to 40 years where are they planning to build schools. Not only with Ames, as we're looking at Ames as far as their statistical analysis, but the schools pay very close attention because you need to get funding for elementary and middle schools. It becomes critical. And so putting that data, we feel that there are 2 areas of growth in the community, and as we're now at 2022, 7 years into it, we can see that those predictions are continuing to prove to be true, which is we're continuing to see growth in the northwest, where we're sitting today in Monticello, and we're continuing to see substantial growth in the southeast, which would be where the Blue Valley Library exists today. So Scott, I'd love to hear your update.
Thanks. Hello, everybody. I'm Scott Syme, project coordinator with the library, and I'll talk first about Central. I'll talk a little bit after that about the Antioch replacement, and then give an overview of the whole thing. So for Central, next slide, please. Today I'll give you an update on Little Central usage, construction, some next steps, and then review the timeline. Next slide, please. Here's a look at our user visits on the left. So you'll see that we're kind of holding steady there from March, April, and May. And then on the right is PC sessions, those 9 PCs that Adam mentioned earlier. So holding pretty steady on usage there too. That kind of calculates on PC sessions to about 5 or 6 sessions per PC per day. Next slide, please. We'll talk a little bit about construction. First thing I want to share with you is last month the library board approved a temporary closure for Central to do some major electrical work there related to the renovation. We said that would occur in August, and I'm bringing back specific dates for you today. That closure will occur from Monday, August 2nd through Sunday the 15th, so about 2 weeks there. I'll show you some pictures in a little bit, but I want to share with you kind of what's been going on over the last month. I'll start with exterior. So you'll see progress on the new drive-through. It's been roofed and the canopy's starting to get framed in. Another exterior thing that's happening is the large windows in the kids area have been installed, and the new trash enclosure around the back, south side, and the delivery canopy have also started being installed. Interior, storytime room framing was completed. Drywall installation is about 95% complete in our system-wide staff areas and has begun in branch areas, and then work progresses on the bathrooms. Next slide, please. So next steps for next month, the team will continue work on the building skin, which is the outermost layer of the exterior, complete exterior wall framing in the system-wide service department areas, continue working on interior wall framing in the branch area, continue overhead mechanical, electrical, and fire suppression installation, continue finishes in the restroom, and then begin drywall in the kids area. We're still working through the furniture selection process. That is winding up. Next slide, please. Here's a look at our timeline. This has been updated since last month, and what I'm trying to show here is on the far right end that we're anticipated still to finish construction in 2021, and that moving back in will spill over into Q1 of 2022. There's a lot of complexity with moving back in, including some collection shifting on the public side, of course fitting out the technology for the new spaces, and then physically moving all the people and all their things back into where they belong from 5 or 6 spots where they're kind of diffused currently. And then we're still providing service at Little Central during all that. Our goal is to get the public areas open as quickly as we reasonably can. So those are the kind of focus areas for getting open first. And then as we can get the departments in, we've got a little bit more flexibility on that. So that's kind of a high-level view of the approach for the timeline, and the Central Project team will keep working on specifics as we continue to plan. Any questions on Central? Okay. I'll go on to, pictures. This is the part everybody's waiting for, right? So you'll see kind of a progression there on the drive-through starting at May of this year, and then what I showed last month, June, and then what it looks like, or what it looked like when they took the picture in early July, or late June, I guess. Pretty exciting. Oh, thanks. Next slide, please. What you're looking at on this one is that exterior loading dock area. You'll see those canopies being framed in on the left side, and then this is a view of the interior of that same area, so you get a good shot of the drywall work that's happening there, and then also some of that natural light that's coming in. And then the last slide for Central. So this is the same area from June to July, and you'll see that the framing was being put up in June and the drywall's going in July there. So I don't know, I think it's kind of cool to show those time-lapsey type photos. Okay, that's it for Central. So moving on to Antioch replacement. Next slide, please. I'll talk a little bit about design and then public engagement and then some next steps. So we're beginning the schematic design phase now. The architects begun putting the data gathered during the programming phase into early concept drawings. We just had our second public engagement event last night over at the site for the future Antioch Library. We had 65 to 70 members of the community and that includes elected and appointed officials. I was very pleased with that turnout. We asked patrons how they wanted to use the new library, how we can make the new library attractive to them, and then how they want to, do they want a different experience at this library versus what they have over at our current library. So we had a lot of great feedback come in. We had some great help from our Antioch staff and other folks across the library and the county to get that event pulled off. Next slide. Oh, maybe that's the right one. Public engagement continues with questions of the week online and in person at the Antioch, current Antioch branch. We'll be reviewing the input we gathered last night and continuing to maintain contact with community partners to encourage just as much participation in the input process as we can. We'll start having schematic design meetings with library staff to begin discussing areas of the building like the collection, circulation areas, technology, AV, and public spaces. And we are anticipating giving a design update from the architect at the September board meeting, so that's something to look forward to. Okay, next slide. I think it's timeline. We're at where the red arrow is. No changes on this timeline from last month. Any questions on the Antioch replacement? Okay. I'll move on to the last one, which is capital improvement project timeline. Next slide. Okay, this is the big new building project slide. The only change on this one is to reflect what I talked about a little bit earlier with the central timeline. So same timeline for both of those slides. And then next slide. This is our capital replacement program timeline. So I want to give you a quick update on each one of those branches on the right side. Cedar Row reopened about 3 weeks ago with new shelving and an improved HVAC system. And as we talked about a little bit last month, due to material supply issues, we weren't able to begin the sloped shingle roofing project. You have an action item on the agenda later that proposes to begin this work in July or August once we have those materials in hand. And that work would require a closure of about 1 week. On Corinth, last month the board approved a closure to complete arc flash work, which is related to the electrical system, in June or July. Our facilities partners have been working with the contractor to confirm a start date. This work's expected to take about 3 days. We don't have any new action needed by the board tonight for Corinth, and we learned before the meeting today that there has been a supply delay, unfortunately, so we'll likely have an item on next month's agenda to talk about the Corinth, moving that Corinth closure back a little bit. Okay, Oak Park has an item on the agenda tonight too, requesting to close for up to 1 week for that arc flash work and also a staff space refresh. During the closure, that electrical work would be done, and then the more intrusive work on the staff space would also be completed. Some of that work can be done while we're still open, so that could wait until afterwards. And Central, I talked a little bit about that earlier. Last month, the board approved a 2-week closure. We now have dates for that, August 2nd through August 15th. And I want to say out loud about about Central and Oak Park, since they're so close geographically. The Central closure and the Oak Park closure, we don't want to overlap those. And that's all for this one. Any questions on capital or CRP?
Thank you, Scott. Now I'd like to talk about 4 issues, give you an update on the Charter Commission, the Board of County Commissioners' strategic focus, the strategic planning update, and then the Claridge Court parking request. So I'm going to start with an update on the succession planning. Really, we're well into this process, working with the House Street Group, identifying qualities of leadership and creating pathways for staff to go forward, generally hiring philosophies and best fit. So let's take a look at the next slide. The model we're following is the same model that we followed really for everything we do, exploring what are the possibilities and where we're at today, coming up with the new ideas, making decisions, developing those decisions, and implementing them, and then going through an evaluation process. So the whole point of this process is to create a document, which I'll be reporting to the board later this year, next slide, that shows continuation of operations if we have changes in the leadership for this organization. Also, to create pathways for people who can come into our organization at various levels and then move up either into areas of management or executive leadership positions. So the timetable here shows that the work we're doing on the left explains what phases we are with what months, and then I plan to deliver this to the board at my appraisal. And I know we have some board members who may not be aware of that request that happened at the last appraisal, but that's something that I wanted to just kind of update you on. Next slide, please. So presentation to the Charter Commission. Next slide, please. So these are the three areas that the Charter Commission was really interested in. Kind of what is your agency and department charged with doing as part of Johnson County government? How do we do that, and how do we do our budget and your reporting authority? So again, what we talked about is vision, mission of this organization. We talked about the policy of how the board has a committee that looks at budget, the budget authorization, how the chair talks in front of the BOCC, and how finally the BOCC then approved that budget. We also talked about how we worked with county management, particularly the county manager's office. How does the current structure of the county government help or limit your department agency's ability to fulfill its mission? We talked a lot about our partnerships. We talked about our approval rating that we're getting, or customer satisfaction rating from the ETC survey, which I think sits around 94% of our constituents believe that we're doing a good job in providing adequate library service. And kind of answered any kind of questions that the charter had. And then the third issue that they were really interested in, what challenges do you foresee for your department agency in the next 10 years? And again, from my standpoint, it was really capital, which is the capital master plan was partially funded. We still have needs in building infrastructure up to that 1.1 mil level that we're needing to be done. That's just the biggest challenge for us going forward. And then adapting to the community and their information needs and how they receive information, as we are really looking at a population that's aging, but also a new population that's moving into this community. And I think it's 2050 is when we're going to double our population in this county. So those were some of the challenges. They're really receptive, ask some questions, but it's a great group of people. Any questions about the Charter Commission? Okay. Next slide, please. So the Board of County Commission focus areas, they just had a retreat, a 2-day retreat. The executive leadership team for the county, which I'm part of, were invited to the second day. And from that 2-day retreat, next slide, please, they came out with these 4 strategic directions. Basically, capital planning is their number one major projects, and I think they're thinking about wastewater, libraries, and parks, have those major projects underway. They're continuing to look at transit, how the community is connected. We've had some recent issues with some of our patrons wanting to attend these board meetings, but the bus service or even the microtransit doesn't go this far west. Strengthen the financial and appropriate level of service to meet needs of the county's vulnerable population. Again, with the COVID year, this became an issue or more apparent to that. How do we keep our community healthy? How do we create the conditions for health? And then the fourth was innovative initiatives, policies, organization, and community that enhance operational effectiveness. So again, looking at how we can streamline operations. I think in 3, we talked a lot about, the commission talked a lot about affordable housing. And I presented, I think I told you last month at UCS, where we talked about affordable housing and some of the work that we're doing as far as Project Race KC and some of the poverty issues that we're experiencing also here in Johnson County. Any questions concerning that? And then the final issue is I've had a request from the Claridge Court. It's a parking request. Claridge's court parking request is They're adjacent to the Corinth Library. Their staff have difficulty parking. They have requested that I bring their request that they use our parking lot so their staff can park there. They've offered some form of financial compensation for that, and I'm really looking for direction from the board if you would want me to go forward and working with them. My only caveat is we're not really in the parking business, and if we provide this exception for this one location, the board would have to then consider all other requests that might be coming from other people that might want to use our parking lot that are adjacent to us.
How many spots are they looking for? And between what hours?
Well, business hours, kind of, so think 8 to 5, and if I'm thinking it's 8 to 10 spots that they would be looking for. That's kind of what my memory.
What is Claridge Court?
Claridge Court is an assisted living. Yeah, it's an assisted living.
How many total parking spots do we have at
Not
the
enough.
library?
No,
I was going to say, I just don't remember that parking lot being very big as it is.
It is. I do not know the number, but I would guess close to 30 in total. Yeah, maybe 50. Yeah. It's the other thing, if you haven't been to that location, it is on 2 levels. So there are lots that would be at the lower level that's closer at door level. And then there are steps that go up to the second level. And I think they were proposing that they would like the second level because they're closer, and then they're not the primary parking lots that our patrons would choose.
Was this a temporary thing, or are they talking
Permanent.
permanent?
Permanent. This is not the first request we've had from them. Our previous requests have been denied, but they've requested again, and I said I would be happy to bring it to the board to get your direction on what I should do. If I should engage them and bring a proposal towards you, or whether you would like me to communicate and say that's not something that we're willing to do at this time.
I have trepidations for allowing that. One, you've already mentioned, we are not in the parking business and we don't want to set a precedent for any other parking lot. And the other thing is I have been to Corinth when I could not find a parking space when there have been programs or events, and I would hate for our patrons not to be able to use the parking lot we've provided for them.
Yep, I think we've had legislative coffees that have been really well attended. We've had like 90 people, and the parking lot's not able to
Well, the
accommodate
edible,
that. Edible discussions.
yeah,
Yep,
those are full, and as, quite frankly, some of the children's programming during the day.
that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. My general inclination would be that this would actually be a literal slippery slope here in terms of a headache that we don't necessarily need. That if we had 1,000 parking spaces, I would be inclined to be neighborly, but the fact is it's already a limited resource that I would be inclined that we need to protect for our patrons before we could be good neighbors. Does anybody else feel differently that you would like to look into that, or?
Exactly what you said, I agree. I mean, if we had a lot of spaces, it would be one thing, but we don't.
Okay, then I would be inclined to send our apologies that we cannot facilitate that particular partnership.
And I agree. I mean, we do it with the one church, but it's a little bit different. They're doing it on Sunday, and it's.
Yeah, and we're not open Sunday.
And we're not,
building's
right,
not even
correct,
open.
correct. So it's a little bit different. So, yeah, I would agree. I don't think we want to follow that road when we have limited.
Resources. Yep, thank you. That concludes the county librarian's report.
All righty. So in our packets, you should have a list of motions as we go through that. The first thing we need to go through is our action items. Any comments?
Chairperson, do you need approval of the consent agenda?
Yeah, that's our first action item would be our consent agenda. So I would take a motion unless someone has some discussion.
I was just going to move that the library board of directors approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Then if you are in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next on our list would be old business.
Yep, so this is what we talked about last week. It's entering into the memorandum of understanding with the Sheriff's Department. Here we're looking at one of the library's vacant manager positions being transitioned to the physical security specialist. FTE would be transferred to the Sheriff's Office as part of this partnership, but we would retain ownership of that FTE. It's been it's had legal review, and this MOU would have to be renewed annually by this board.
Okay, any comments, questions, or concerns about this partnership?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
In a couple of places, it talks about the agreement is for one hire now, but potentially more FTEs in the future. So when will it be determined if there are more bodies needed?
It's a really good question. We look at incident reports, and so we have a kind of an idea of a baseline security. If we see, again, as time goes on and we're seeing that Johnson County is continuing to grow in the demands on the system, or we see an uptick in issues that we're facing, and we're very fortunate that we don't get a lot of severe issues, that we may realize that the staffing level is not adequate. But it would be that data that would drive any decision, and it would have to come to this board, talked about, and it would have to go to the Personnel Review Committee at the county and discussed and rationalized. It would have to go as be part of the budget, so the Budget Committee would look at it, the Library Budget Committee, the CMOs would look at it, and then finally the BOCC would have to approve and ratify that decision. So not imminently, and there'd be lots of steps that we would have to follow to make this happen.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or concerns on this topic?
Just real quick question do you think there's any cost savings doing it, or is it just, you just think that we're going to have a more expert overseeing this?
I don't think. Okay, let me answer it this way because it's a good question. I don't think there are going to be probably any real direct cost benefits, but I think there are going to be indirect cost benefits that we're going to get by having that relationship with the sheriff, meaning that we're going to be able to move from reactive to proactive, and that we're going to be aware of issues much sooner. The sooner we are aware of security issues, the faster and cheaper we're able to generally react to them. But in straight direct costs, I think it's a wash. I don't think it's costing us more. The nice thing is that we're not increasing costs, but we are going to increase our security level, and I think that's a smart move. Just as we are seeing some trends towards people still being elevated when they come into public spaces.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
No, that answers my question, so.
Okay, fantastic. I would take a motion if anyone is so inclined.
I move the Johnson County Library Board of Directors approves the memorandum of understanding between Johnson County Library and the Sheriff's Office for 2021.
And a second, please.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next issue, which is under new business, is the closure of Cedar Row Roofing. To consider a temporary closure of Cedar Row Library for a period of approximately 5 days in July and or August to allow for the replacement of sloping roof shingles. Again, this is a supply line item for us, or where we're really being delayed by both weather and materials to be able to get this scheduled. That's why we're coming back to you to ask for this closure. My recommendation is to approve this temporary closure of this location. If it pushes out past August, then we'll come back and seek approval again.
Good times. Okay, any questions, comments, or concerns?
I mean, are the costs elevated as well on top of that? And if so, would it make sense to even push it out a month, or is it Cedar Row at a point where
Yeah, so the contract is signed, and so the price, there's a guaranteed maximum price on that project. There have been some issues, and I think, see if Sean is here. He's not here, but there may be requests for changes. So there's contingency money built into that, but we may get change orders. I cannot see the price on this project going up. My personal feeling is that there's an opportunity in either July and August to get this done. We should do it. It's just, again, construction is, before we enter into the fall and winter where it gets to be a little more problematic, we need to. But if we get a very wet August, then it's it's weather dependent.
We are all doing the best we can. I feel like we should just print the sign. Sorry, we're really trying. So given that, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Then I would take a motion, please.
I move to approve a temporary closure of Cedar Row Library for a period of approximately 5 days in July and/or August to allow for the replacement of sloped shingle roofing.
And a second, please.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next issue is about Oak Park for the temporary closure for arc flash. We've talked about this, the electrical upgrade that we need on the panels. Consider approving the temporary closure of Oak Park for up to 1 week in August and September to perform the arc flash hazard work and interior updates. Now, I'm just going to before we go too far forward on this, because we've got a lot of things that are closing and closed, and those dates are shifting as we're trying to figure out when the companies are getting supplies. No matter when the companies are getting supplies, what we're attempting to do and working very hard is not to have multiple closures simultaneously. And so this one you'll see August and September, but we would be shooting not to have, if at all possible, Cedar Row and Oak Park and Central Library closed at the same time. And so we're working with the vendors or the construction companies to assure that that doesn't happen. So here we're looking for August or September to perform that upgrade.
I'm glad you're taking that into account.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Any other questions, comments, or concerns about this matter? Then I would take a motion, please.
I move to approve the temporary closure of Oak Park Library for up to 1 week in August and/or September to perform arc flash hazard work and interior updates.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And the final update is to the parking policy. From time to time, we have cars that park overnight for various reasons. Again, what we have run into once or twice is an instance where someone begins to start using the parking lot as where they live. And so they'll live in their car and they'll sleep there overnight. What we're looking for is a change in policy that prohibits camping overnight at the library.
How many incidences of this have you had
I have 2 that I remember.
in last 8 years?
In the last 8 years, there are 2 the 2 that I remember, and both of those, from my memory, happened at Central. We have one that's going on today, which kind of sparked this, and we had a previous one with a van. I think we have incidences where people who've been living in their car or their car breaks down and they feel that the library is a safe place or a place that they can park while they're getting it repaired, but they continue to live in that car. And I can't remember the one that happened a couple of years ago. Jen, do you have a memory of it?
So, that's okay.
There's the 2.
So I question the language that was added to this policy, only that it's not specifically identifying those type of situations, which I would be more than happy to approve in that situation. But you're putting limits on it from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. And, I think of all the situations where our patrons might leave a car back and come back later. Under this scenario, you're allowing the car to be towed if it's there at midnight when somebody may be coming to pick it up at 12:02 or something.
Yep.
So I'm a little concerned about that. And the fact that legal counsel has said that you have discretion to tow, I'm questioning the need to change the arm.
That is a good question. So what we tend to do, and we talked a little about this at the administrative level, and we definitely can table this and work on the language. So there are situations like with the Lenexa City Center where they may have an event that involves alcohol, and someone may decide to leave their car there and then take an Uber or a taxi home. We're not talking about that, and that's where the discretion was put in, that if it's 5 after 10, we're not having anyone patrol our parking lots, though we will have video surveillance and towing the vehicle. But if we do see a pattern of behavior where that vehicle is there multiple nights, then we may go and investigate. Now,
Can't you do that already?
yes, but we don't have the authorization by policy to say you cannot park overnight on these premises. We don't have policy that prohibits that. If you would like us to go back and present next month with more explicit language about camping or sleeping in your car or looking at how other organizations do that, I'm more than happy to work on the language.
That would be my preference.
Okay.
That I
Mine
would
as
like to
well.
see, because we're talking, this is an overarching policy matter. I'd like to see a lot more specificity in language so that we don't have to deal with, I left my car because I didn't want to drunk drive, and then that's your problem to deal with. Or I want to see a lot more specificity that what we're talking about is residing in a vehicle that is on library property versus somebody being a good neighbor and not driving while intoxicated, or somebody who's caught in an unfortunate situation that they're trying to work out also doesn't become our problem, because in that situation, we could be a good neighbor. So I would like to see more specificity in language.
So what I'm hearing is general consensus is let's table this issue, not put it to a vote, and then come back with refined language. Would you guys prefer us to maybe put a draft out of this onto the portal for your review before we do this, because it will give us a little time?
Madam Chair, I think so, Sean, and I actually was a little concerned when I read it, when I saw it in the packet too. I made a trip to Manhattan one weekend, and I thought the library was a convenient place to leave my car and rode with someone else, and then I went, oh, crud, because, Central was a close meeting spot, big lot, everyone can see your vehicle.
It's generally well lit. So let's, I've heard what you guys said. Let me work on that with legal counsel and staff and bring a draft back for your review, maybe as an informational item. If it needs to be further refinement, we can do that. And that concludes new business.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Something legislatively interesting. Wow. How exciting. And now for real excitement, anything else anyone has to add, or I would take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Fantastic. See you guys in August.